welcome to the stage Jonathan Weber, CEO at Marathon Studios Incorporation.
Hello everybody, my name is Jonathan Weber. I'm the CEO of Marathon Studios Incorporated. It's a great honor to be here for the second Arab Security Conference. And today I'm going to be giving a two-part presentation. So this is going to be about Bitcoin, blockchain, and Ethereum, as well as altcoins. On the second half of the presentation, we'll be talking about one of the main places where the blockchain is used today, which is the Darknet. So while we get the tech set up, I want to take a little picture to send back to my colleagues in the USA. Are we good? Okay, cryptocurrencies and the Darknet. So in our last presentation, Osama did a good job in explaining some of the technical details of blockchain. And blockchain is the technology that is behind most cryptocurrencies that we have today, including Bitcoin and Ethereum. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the blockchain, but mainly I'm going to be talking about what you can do with it in the cases of cryptocurrencies and their uses on the dark web and elsewhere. So my name is John Weber. I'm based in Pennsylvania, United States. I'm the CEO of Marathon Studios Incorporated. I'm also the owner of AbuseIPDB, which is a cybersecurity service for reporting hacking and other abusive behavior on the internet. And in this two-part presentation, on the first half, we're going to be covering cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and altcoins, which are other types of cryptocurrencies that are available. And we'll talk about cryptocurrency in 2018 and the future. So I gave this presentation last year in 2017, and since 2017, in only the 12 months, many things have changed. In the second half of this presentation, we'll be talking about the Darknet. So the Darknet is a portion of the internet that is unavailable through a regular internet connection. It can only be accessed through something called Tor routing. And we're going to be doing a real-time tour, which is the first time that it's ever been done here, to show you what you can find on the Darknet. And we'll also be concluding with case studies on Darknet forensics. So how law enforcement in the United States and other countries around the world has been able to track down and suppress illegal sites on the Darknet. So cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, really underpin the new digital economy. There never has been a purely digital currency before. And Bitcoin, of course, is the most well-known, and it's the most widely used. So in the first part of this presentation, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk a little bit about how it works, but blockchain technology was covered in the last presentation. And then we'll be talking about applications and using Bitcoin. The second part, talk about Ethereum, which is the rapidly growing number 2 cryptocurrency. Talk a little bit about how it's different from Bitcoin, what you can do with it, and we'll also be talking about what happened with Ethereum over the last year. So Bitcoin is the first cryptocurrency. It was introduced by a gentleman named Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009. That isn't the real name of an individual. We don't know who it was. We don't know if it was multiple people. We don't know if he was Japanese or English or American. But he's the person that published the white paper introducing Bitcoin to the world. The first Bitcoin blockchain transaction occurred in 2009. And the first real-world transaction with Bitcoin was when 2 pizzas were purchased in 2010. So I reran the math, and if those pizzas were purchased today at Bitcoin's current valuation, they would have been worth about $50 million. Whoever bought those pizzas is probably very upset that they did so. So this is the graph of Bitcoin. Now this is the graph of Bitcoin that I showed at this presentation last year. And as you can see back here, in the early days, 2009, Bitcoin was worth very little. It was worth cents. Then you went into 2014. It first started getting some mainstream media attention. And then last year, in 2017, it really started to take off. everybody began to talk about it. It began to get all over the news, whether it's good things, such as the fact that it allows different investments, it allows international transactions, or the bad things, such as it being used in the blockchain. Right here is the Arab Security Conference last year. So Bitcoin had just reached its highest peak, taken a little downside, and then let's take a look at what happened after that. So this is the Arab Security Conference last year. This is today. So since that happened, we had the biggest boom and bust of a cryptocurrency ever. This is one of the most volatile investments that's ever been seen. And this peak, can't even get up there, this peak happened because in America and in Europe and many other countries around the world, cryptocurrency went from being a niche subject that was commonly known by computer science students and technical people and geeks to something that everybody was talking about on the street. Everybody was saying this is the new internet. It's the new tech stock. And I remember in my city last year in December, which is right here at about the peak, I was hearing janitors, haircutters, and everybody speaking about Bitcoin and how they were going to buy it. And then right after that happened, the bottom fell out. Bitcoin crashed. It was at its peak worth about 20,000 US dollars. It went down to that. Today it's worth 6,700 US dollars, so less than half of what it was. Still higher than it was last year at this time, but a fraction of what it was before. So in Egyptian pounds, that's about 120,000 Egyptian pounds. So why would people use Bitcoin as opposed to standard currency? So the advantages that you have is that Bitcoin is secure. So as explained in the blockchain presentation, every transaction that's made on the Bitcoin network is public. Everything is available on the internet for you to audit, for anybody else to audit. It's irreversible. When you send money or when you receive money, somebody can't then take that money back. It's transparent. If you're making a payment and you need to prove to somebody that you made that payment, it can be done. It's also cheap. So it's cheap relative to traditional methods of banking. So today, if I need to wire money from the United States to Europe or the United States to China, I have to pay banking fees, which can be very, very high. If I send money with Bitcoin, the costs are a fraction of what it would be if you were sending it with a traditional bank. So this is one of the biggest applications of Bitcoin is in the fintech industry. So when I pay overseas suppliers in the Middle East and in Asia, I actually use a Bitcoin-backed service that transfers money, and it's a whole lot cheaper than if I was paying with a normal bank. The disadvantages of Bitcoin, and there are many, is that one, it facilitates a lot of fraud. The reason that Bitcoin is chosen as a financial tool for fraud is because of many of the advantages. It's secure. It can be done very anonymously. Those transactions cannot be reversed. If you scam someone out of their money, they can't come and take it back. It also has issues with ease of use. So Bitcoin has been, from the very beginning, something that required some technical knowledge to be able to use. Now, as time has gone on, it's become easier and easier to use. Last year, in December, there were dozens and dozens of exchanges in the United States and around the world that would allow anybody, even with little to no technical knowledge, to be able to purchase and use Bitcoin. And that issue still does exist, that you still have to go and find out where to get it, but it's nowhere near as big of an issue as it was previously. Another one of the major features of Bitcoin is decentralization. So this is based on the blockchain technology. Blockchain is distributed among every single user of the Bitcoin network. There is no central operation, there is no bank that controls Bitcoin. So what exactly is Bitcoin controlled by? It's controlled by the miner consensus. So miners, which I'll explain in a slide or two, is the sum of all of the individuals and entities that are contributing computing power to the Bitcoin network. In exchange for contributing computing power, they're rewarded with newly mined Bitcoin and Bitcoin transaction fees. So as long as the majority of those miners agree with a transaction, they verify that transaction, then that transaction becomes a verified part of the blockchain. So you have to have 50% of the vote, 50% of the mining power to be able to agree on consensus. And this leads to one of the biggest weaknesses of the blockchain system, that you have what's called the 51% attack. If any one individual or one group of individuals gets more than 50% of the power, they can, in essence, hijack the Bitcoin network. It was thought by Satoshi Nakamoto that this could never happen. Nobody would ever have close to 50%. But today, because it is so hard to mine Bitcoin, people have to join together into giant groups called mining pools to be able to contribute the resources that are necessary to mine. And the largest one of those mining consortiums has 22% of all of the power on the network. So it is now seen as a real possibility that there could be somebody who has control of over 50%. Again, Bitcoin runs on the blockchain. The blockchain is the technology that was discussed before. It's a distributed ledger. And because that ledger contains every single transaction that ever took place in the Bitcoin network, it is very large. Today, the blockchain itself is about 180 gigabytes in size. So if you want to have a full node wallet on your computer, which means you have the entirety of the blockchain, you're going to need to spend about 180 gigabytes of space. Because of this, there have become more and more websites that offer to hold your Bitcoin for you so that you don't have to do that, which does have its own issues that we'll talk about in the future. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining the blockchain technology, which was covered in the last presentation, but each transaction is cryptographically linked to the previous node in the blockchain. Each node, each block, has multiple transactions. And then each transaction is verified by multiple other miners who all confirm that, yes, this transaction is legitimate and is going to become a part of the permanent record. So everything on the Bitcoin blockchain is public. So your Bitcoin address is your public key, and then you have a private key that you can use to access those Bitcoins. You can notice a lot of information about these Bitcoin keys, which allows the new field of Bitcoin forensics. So you can see first seen, last seen. For instance, when an address was seen on the network, you can see a transaction history. You can see which addresses have been used to pay and which addresses have been used to receive. And then you can also get vanity addresses that even have like a little part of your business name or your own name, if you so choose. So how do you get Bitcoins? There's a number of different ways to get it. And then there's also a number of different ways to spend it. So to get Bitcoins, you can buy them. You can buy them either on a regulated exchange, where you have to go, and in many cases, due to recent legislation, you have to provide your passport, your personal information. Then you can exchange US dollars, euros, Egyptian pounds for Bitcoin. You can work for Bitcoin. There are a number of places on the internet, both legal and illegal, where people will pay you for various services. You can also mine your own Bitcoin, which is essentially creating them from nothing. This is something that I'll explain in a future slide. And then you also have a service called Local Bitcoins. So Local Bitcoins is one of a number of different websites where you can go to facilitate a direct transaction with someone nearby you who owns Bitcoin and wants to sell it. So this page right here is a list of people in Cairo right now who have published their availability to sell Bitcoin for various methods of currency. So here we have a username, Habush, who is willing to sell Bitcoin for 122,432 Egyptian pounds. And he will accept payment via Vodafone, Orange, Western Union. Down here we have somebody who will do National Bank Transfer Egypt for 128,000. This person only accepts transfers through the CIB bank. So all of these people are people who currently have Bitcoin and are looking to buy and sell. And this is only in this area. So Bitcoin mining is the second method. It was actually the first method to acquire Bitcoin. Mining is connected to the Bitcoin system in which you are contributing computing power to the blockchain network, which will then verify transactions and solve hard cryptographic problems, and in exchange, you can be rewarded with Bitcoin for your efforts. So it used to be that several years ago, it was relatively easy to mine Bitcoin. You could mine Bitcoin with a laptop. You could mine Bitcoin with a phone. You could mine Bitcoin with a graphics card. So back in those days, I actually mined Bitcoin in my office with my office computer. And I was able to mine about 3 Bitcoin that way. That was back in 2014. Nowadays, you cannot mine Bitcoin with graphics cards or laptops anymore. The difficulty is too high. There's too much competition. You need specialized equipment that's called ASICs, which is an application-specific integrated circuit to be able to effectively mine Bitcoin. So this device that you see here is called the Ant Miner. It costs about $1,000 and it's made by a Chinese factory. And right now, the biggest miners of Bitcoin have rooms full of these things. They take a lot of electricity, they make a lot of sound. I have a friend, he has a Bitcoin mine in a small warehouse, and it sounds about the same as a plane taking off. The walls have to have special soundproofing to enable him to actually go in there without hurting his ears. You store Bitcoin in what's called a Bitcoin wallet. So a Bitcoin wallet is just a name for the actual private key that controls the Bitcoin. So essentially that wallet can be stored in a number of ways. You can even print it on a piece of paper, like these little example Bitcoin wallets here. You have desktop wallets, hardware wallets, mobile wallets, and web wallets. So like I had mentioned before, the size of the blockchain is 180 gigabytes. If you want to have a full wallet, you have to store the entirety of that blockchain on your device. That's not possible. A phone cannot store 180 gigabytes every time you want to make a transaction. So in these cases, many people use what's called a thin wallet or a web wallet, where that service stores the blockchain for you and stores your private keys for you. This is a security risk because you're giving them, in effect, control over your Bitcoin, but it also allows you to store your Bitcoin and use it without having to deal with all of the overhead of having a full node. There also are web wallets on the Darknet, which will connect the two parts of this presentation together. So the Darknet adds another level of anonymity to this cryptocurrency so that even your accessing your wallet is something that is not able to be tracked by governments or law enforcement. But is Bitcoin truly anonymous? So this is something that many people are mistaken about. The press and many people describe Bitcoin as a completely anonymous cryptocurrency, when the truth is that it's not. It was never designed to be anonymous. Bitcoin is designed to be pseudonymous. So essentially this means that you are using a token, you're using a fake name, you're identified by your public key. Your public key is available for everybody to see. So I have Bitcoin public keys that I've posted on my websites, that I've sent in emails, and if you know that that key exists and belongs to me, then you can track every single transaction that I have made with that public key. So this is where the weakness in Bitcoin is. There is no central registry for all of this information. There is no way that when you sign up for a Bitcoin wallet, you are required to put in your personal information or your company information or your address. But if you do put it in somewhere and someone can connect that information to your wallet, they will be able to trace every single transaction that you made. And it's through these methods that most convictions and most forensic work on the blockchain is done when you're trying to track down a criminal who's using cryptocurrencies. There are ways that you can add additional levels of anonymity to Bitcoin. So One is called Bitcoin tumbling. So Bitcoin tumbling is a service that essentially launders your Bitcoin. So the step one is you acquire Bitcoin. Maybe you mined it. Maybe you sold something on the Darknet. Maybe somebody paid you in Bitcoin and you do not want that Bitcoin to be traceable. You then take that Bitcoin and you go to a service called a tumbler. You transmit your Bitcoin into that service, and so do 100 other people who also want to anonymize your Bitcoin. That tumbler mixes all of the Bitcoin together and then sends you back the same amount that you sent in minus a transaction fee. So for a tiny transaction fee of that Bitcoin that you sent in, you essentially get clean Bitcoin that has been so mixed around that nobody will be able to effectively convert it back to that original address that it came from. And research has shown that about 2 to 10% of Bitcoin transactions that are made wind up going through a tumbling service. So Bitcoin tumblers are not illegal. Many people use Bitcoin tumblers just because they want to level up their privacy. They don't want people to be able to go and track their transactions. But again, many people use Bitcoin tumblers because the Bitcoin that they are receiving have been received through illegal activities like the Darknet. So how can Bitcoin be traced if it's not a perfectly anonymous currency? And especially if no owner information has been recorded. So the answer to this is that by default, if you as a Bitcoin owner do everything to keep your name and your identity separate from your Bitcoin addresses, it cannot be traced. But in most cases, that is not what happens. There are centralized choke points in the Bitcoin network that are centralized, not decentralized like the rest of the network. So these are places like Bitcoin exchanges, Bitcoin wallets, anywhere that you will have to go and then provide some sort of additional information to interact with the Bitcoin network. So under United States regulation, any Bitcoin exchange that wants to exchange Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency for US dollars has to collect your personal information. And that personal information is available for government or law enforcement if they trace the Bitcoin and determine that it's been acquired fraudulently. So what this does is this essentially imprisons people who have a lot of Bitcoin and then want to cash it out for funds. So we're going to talk a little bit later in this presentation about several huge hacks that resulted in millions and millions of dollars in Bitcoin being stolen. So now, let's say that I've stolen $50 million worth of Bitcoin. How do I turn that into euros, into dollars? If I can't go to one of the major exchanges or the major banks to convert it into money without my identity being compromised, it's going to be very, very difficult for me to cash out that currency. So in the United States, the FBI has stated that in some situations they do have the ability to completely trace Bitcoin using blockchain forensics, even in certain situations when a low security Bitcoin tumbler has been used. This is only one of the methods that you can use for Bitcoin forensics. The three major methods that are available to governments and law enforcement are network analysis, which is connecting the actual individuals who are using the Bitcoin network to an IP address or to a specific computer. There are limitations to this. You have to have a lot of resources. You have to be able to monitor the entire Bitcoin network. But Bitcoin is a network just like BitTorrent, just like any other peer-to-peer system, and it is possible to surveil it. The second method is transaction analysis, which is what we were discussing before. Every transaction on the blockchain is publicly available, and it is possible to go and then trace transactions from one address to another. The third method is wallet analysis. So this is if you arrest somebody and you have their phone or you have their computer, it is possible for you in many situations to find out if they have Bitcoin stored on those devices and in some cases seize that Bitcoin. So if anybody here is interested in learning more technical details about Bitcoin forensics and blockchain forensics, I'll be covering this tomorrow at the workshop over in the War Games room, and we'll actually be doing some of this in real time. So in conclusion on Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the gold standard cryptocurrency, and it still has the highest value and the highest usage rate out of all of the other cryptocurrencies that exist. However, new cryptocurrencies are introduced frequently. Will one of them replace Bitcoin someday as the most valuable? It's possible. And one of these hot new cryptocurrencies that we're going to discuss today is Ethereum. So Ethereum is a relatively new type of cryptocurrency as compared to Bitcoin. While Bitcoin came around in 2009, Ethereum was proposed in 2013 by a guy named Vitalik Buterin, and it was launched in 2015. So Ethereum builds on the same blockchain technology that was first introduced by Bitcoin, but it supports a wider range of usage than just as a currency. And it's also experienced a huge surge in popularity and value over the last year, but it was also seriously affected by the Bitcoin bubble of 2017. So you can see here, this is the Arab Security Conference of last year, when we also discussed Ethereum. In the months after that, it rose incredibly high. And then right here, this is about where you had the peak of Bitcoin as well. It also crashed. And it crashed even worse than Bitcoin did. It went all the way down to the level where it was and then even lower. Ethereum right now is worth less than it was at this time last year. And the reason for that is several-fold, because Ethereum does have a lot more features than Bitcoin does. But a lot of those features were used for something called ICOs and distributed applications, which received a lot of hype in 2017 and early 2018, and also have had a lot of negative feedback because of how they were used. So this is a brief comparison of the Ethereum and Bitcoin blockchains. So this is the Bitcoin blockchain. You have each block that's connected to the previous blocks by a hash, and then each block contains multiple transactions that show the states of various Bitcoin wallets. Then when you have a transaction, that's updated in the next block. And that's it. The Bitcoin blockchain, while it's a very complex theory, what it does is actually pretty simple. In the case of Ethereum, Ethereum takes that same blockchain technology, but instead of only attaching transactions, you can attach, in effect, true Turing-complete applications, which means you can attach basically a computer program to this blockchain. That computer program will be run in a distributed fashion among all of the people who are running Ethereum on their machines, and it will ensure that that application is run in the method that it was intended to be run. These applications are called Ethereum smart contracts. So an Ethereum smart contract is the big idea behind Ethereum, and it essentially means that any kind of multi-user transaction can be coded into a smart contract and then launched on the Ethereum network. So this code lives on the blockchain, it's cryptographically verified by everybody else, and you can also see it. Everybody can see that code, everybody can verify that it's doing what it is supposed to do. So Ethereum contracts have become very, very, very popular for use with things like ensuring real-life contracts, doing monetary transfers, ensuring contracts that are supposed to be based on some kind of real-world input. So naturally, when smart contracts were introduced, a lot of people started thinking about what this can be used for. So in essence, people started coming up with ideas for a new token that they could create powered by Ethereum. And then they created what was called an ICO, initial coin offering. So the ICO is what caused that giant spike and then that giant crash in Ethereum. ICOs were a revolutionary idea in which you could create a new token and then say this token will be the currency that powers my Ethereum application. And then they would offer people the ability to purchase those tokens for initially a very low cost and then later perhaps a higher cost as the application became more and more used. So in effect, they created a new method of investing in a high technology company. In the first half of 2017, $1.27 billion was invested in initial coin offerings. In the second half of 2017 and early 18, it was that number multiples of times over. This is more money than was invested in real traditional companies through venture capital. But problems with smart contracts started coming up just as soon as their popularity began to get that high. So just like with any other code, you can have bugs, you can have security flaws in a smart contract. There was one particular distributed application called the DAO, D-A-O. This was a decentralized Ethereum crowdfunding network that was meant to be similar to GoFundMe or Kickstarter, and they raised $150 million worth of Ethereum in their initial coin offering. The press was talking about what an amazing idea this was. Many people were investing. The value of their initial coin offering token was going up. So the initial people that purchased it were making a lot of money on paper. But one day, over 50 million of that money was stolen in minutes by an unknown hacker who had found a single line of code that had a bug in that distributed application's code. Again, that application's code was on the blockchain. Everybody could see it. This hacker read it very carefully and he found a bug. As a matter of fact, the only reason that the other $100 million was not stolen was because a second white hat hacker also saw the same bug, and he stole the other $100 million and then gave it back to the people who had initially invested in it. This is just one case of a hacking event that happened. They happen constantly. Every single month you hear about a new Bitcoin exchange or an Ethereum ICO being hacked. Last August, $500,000 was stolen in minutes when an attacker hacked a website. He didn't even hack the smart contract. He hacked the website of one of these ICO companies and changed the Ethereum address that you would send the cryptocurrency to receive your investment. Over $15 million has been stolen by similar methods since, and those are just the ones we know about. But they're high potential rewards with ICOs, and that's what encourages people to continue investing in them despite the risk. But as you've seen, the ICO investment has not been able to stop the fall of Ethereum, and that's also because many of these ICOs, even if they didn't get hacked, did not wind up delivering on a product. Ethereum is the Wild West. It's new, it's unregulated. The US government is still rushing to regulate the security transactions, but many people have made millions, even billions of dollars. Many other people have lost similar amounts. So as a wrap up for Ethereum, the advantages are that Ethereum supports these tokens that can be used for ICOs. It supports smart contracts, which have the ability to be used in many situations. It's younger than Bitcoin. It introduces some advantages over Bitcoin, and there's a lot of people who are contributing to it. But the downsides of Ethereum are that you have these security issues. It is untested when it comes to raising money or raising funding, and it was very overhyped in the 2017 Ethereum and Bitcoin crash. And many people hope that Ethereum will not suffer in the long term as the result of those mistakes. So finally, there's one topic in Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptocurrencies in general that needs to be talked about, and that's altcoins. So altcoin stands for alternative coin. So really it means an alternative to Bitcoin. Ethereum is technically an altcoin, but there are hundreds of different cryptocurrencies that are available, and more of them are created every single day. So this is an example of the US dollar values of the 5 most common altcoins as of yesterday. You have Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, and XRP, which is Ripple. You also have some additional altcoins that were created specifically with higher security in mind. So you have altcoins called Monero and Zcash, which are created in effect to eliminate the problem of the public blockchain in Bitcoin. If you make a payment in Monero or you receive a payment in Monero, there is almost no way that that payment can be tracked or traced back to you. Monero is one of the most worrying coins for governments and for law enforcement for this reason. But still, compared to Bitcoin and the other alt currencies, it's still very small. There are even government-supported cryptocurrencies. So recently, Venezuela has launched a cryptocurrency called Petro Coin. They are attempting to create a currency that is backed up by oil. And of course, due to the issues with Venezuela's real currency, they do need as much help as they can get. But the Petro Coin hasn't really taken off. And one of those reasons is because the United States government has forbidden individuals in the United States, where most cryptocurrency investors currently come from investing in Petro Coin. But Venezuela is the first government to introduce their own cryptocurrency, and they will not be the last. With all of these altcoins joining the market, Bitcoin's overall market share, which used to be at the beginning 100%, has dropped to under 50% of the market share for all cryptocurrencies. So you can see here again, this is in real time as of today. You have Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, which is Ripple, Litecoin, and then all of these other smaller cryptocurrencies, all of which are growing or shrinking based on current investor mindset, people who are building new applications with them, governments who are either approving or disapproving of these cryptocurrencies. Which brings us to the last topic on cryptocurrencies, which is how are they being addressed by governments? And up until recently, the answer to this question was that they were not. Cryptocurrencies moved extremely fast. They were developed extremely fast. And governments simply could not move fast enough to come up with regulation to prevent people from using these cryptocurrencies. So currently, countries regulating or intending to regulate crypto include Australia, Canada, China, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea, Switzerland, the UK, and the US. So the United States has introduced regulation that causes all cryptocurrencies to be regulated the same way that regular money transactions are. Japan has banned several cryptocurrency exchanges for being insecure, and China has actually banned the use of cryptocurrencies for international trading. China does not like the fact that these cryptocurrencies can operate outside of the sphere of control of the government. And while they haven't banned it for private use, they have in essence banned all major cryptocurrency exchanges from taking place in their borders. So regardless of the fate of any individual cryptocurrency, blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies are a major invention that will be around in the long term. So learning about cryptocurrency, learning about blockchain is something that would be highly valuable. And if anybody is interested in learning some more technical details with regards to the security aspect of Bitcoins, with the criminal usage of Bitcoins, and the forensics of Bitcoins, I'll be covering that tomorrow in my hands-on session in the room next door. So that concludes the first part of this session. I'm going to have to go quickly through the second part on the Darknet due to time constraints, and then if you have any questions on Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, please save them until the end. So Tor and the Darknet is the subject of our second half. So this connects to Bitcoin because the two of them grew together. And up until very recently, dark markets and Tor were some of the only places where you could spend Bitcoin. So we'll be covering in this an explanation of what Tor is and what you can find on the Darknet. We're going to do an actual look at several Darknet websites. And finally, we'll have a case study on how the first Darknet market was taken down by US law enforcement. So Tor stands for the Onion Router. It was actually invented by the US government as a secure transaction method for communications across insecure networks. It was called by the NSA to be the king of high secure, low latency internet anonymity. And it provides you with two things. It provides you, one, with anonymity when you're visiting a standard website, which means that if I connect to Google via Tor, Google cannot tell that I am visiting it. It's coming from an anonymous IP address that's very difficult to trace back to me. Second, it provides access to what's called hidden services. So Tor Hidden Services provide two-way anonymity, where it's a website that cannot identify who you are, and you also cannot identify where that website is located. So most browsers, most users connect through the Tor browser. So I'll be showing you the Tor browser within the next few minutes. It's a version of Firefox that has the Tor routing system built into it. So Tor nodes essentially take an individual who is connecting through the Tor network, and then it bounces your communications through multiple servers all over the world. Maybe this one is in the United States, this one is in Egypt, this one is in France, before finally sending you to the final location that you're visiting. That location can only see the last hop. It can only see the Tor exit node that you came from. It has no way of tracing back to the individual who's actually visiting that site. So Tor Accessibility in Egypt. Many of the major ISPs in Egypt drop packets that are bound for known Tor entry nodes. But in Egypt and in other countries, it's difficult, if not completely impossible, to block Tor because Tor exit nodes and entry nodes are constantly changing, and these blocking methods can be bypassed with a VPN, which also defeats packet inspection. So I do have a VPN connection set up on the computer, and we will actually be accessing several Darknet sites directly in this presentation. So Tor Hidden Services, like we discussed before, they provide two-way anonymity. So if you have a server here that provides a website, and then you have an individual who wants to visit it, the connections from both of those are scrambled by the Tor network so that neither side can identify the other. So naturally, this two-way anonymity means that Tor Hidden Services are very, very attractive for cyber criminals who want to be able to do things on the internet in a way that's publicly accessible, but they do not want to be caught. So what will you find on the Darknet? You can find dark markets where people can purchase drugs, counterfeits, weapons. You can find Bitcoin tumblers, financial services, methods of conducting fraud. You'll find hidden services, and you'll also find methods of anonymous communication. So a dark market works essentially the same way that Amazon or eBay or any other marketplace can work. The buyer will exchange their currency for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin will be transmitted into their buyer's account on that market. The buyer can then make a purchase of drugs or weapons or counterfeits. The seller will then find a secure method to mail that purchase to the buyer, and then the seller can convert the Bitcoin or the other cryptocurrency that they received to fiat currency. Exit scams are very common. Essentially, this means that because you do not know who's running the market, you don't know who the seller is, they can take your money and run. And of course, if you are scammed on a dark market, you can't exactly go to the police and say someone stole my money while I was trying to buy illegal drugs and weapons. So we're going to do a quick look at the Darknet. So I've fired up here the Tor browser, and we are accessing right now a website called the Hidden Wiki. The Hidden Wiki is one of many similar pages that actually shows you a list of all of these hidden sites. It's one of the only ways to find these sites unless somebody tells you about it otherwise. So you can see on here a list of all the different websites that you can go to for sharing illegal information, for selling and purchasing drugs, for laundering stolen money. We can see over here a marketplace where you can purchase counterfeit US dollars or euros. They explain to you all the security features that they have. They give you their prices, $250 US dollars for $2,000 worth of counterfeit money. We can see over here a crypto wallet, a Bitcoin wallet like we discussed before. Over here is another Darknet site where you can purchase hacked and stolen PayPal accounts. So you can see here the country, their email. So you can purchase a Canadian PayPal account with $1,213 in it for $205 in Bitcoin. You can purchase electronics bought with stolen credit cards, unlocked smartphones bought with stolen credit cards, and weapons. So you can see here a dark market that is selling pistols, carbines, assault rifles, scopes. They have the prices, they have their ammunition. Over here you can see another one that specifically advertises that you can buy and sell these weapons in Europe despite their extremely high gun laws. So there was actually a case last year where an individual purchased a weapon off of the Darknet and then used that in a mass shooting. There are also many sites where you can purchase stolen credit cards. So this over here is another little place where you can purchase stolen credit cards, stolen debit cards. And then this is the dream market. So this is one of the last remaining major Bitcoin markets. Many of the other ones have been taken down. But on this market, you can see that you can purchase drugs, you can purchase counterfeits, and you can even purchase fake IDs. So all of this is currently available, but law enforcement has been very quick in taking down most of these sites. So we've finished our Darknet tour, and we're going to go very quickly through this case study because we're running low on time. The Silk Road was the first large cryptocurrency-based Darknet market, and it was essentially the same thing that I just showed you. You could buy guns, you could buy weapons, you could buy drugs. And it was taken down not through some advanced policing method. It wasn't taken down through some CIA hacker. It was taken down through a simple Google search. So somebody found the Dread Pirate Roberts searching for people to visit his site, and they found him using his real email address with his real name. So this is the post that they found. The Dread Pirate Roberts, the owner of this site, was actually named Ross Ulbricht, and they found him right after he launched this site with his real email address, and he was arrested, logged into the admin interface of his site. So the moral of the story is that the regular web will shine light on the dark web. This has happened again. Alpha Bay, the next big Darknet market, was also taken down last year by Dutch police, and they also found the owner of it using his regular yahoo.com email address that was connected to his PayPal account and connected to his individual name, and then they arrested him, and he actually committed suicide in a Thai prison earlier this year. There were scandals associated with this, where even in the US government, Secret Service agents and FBI agents were stealing Bitcoin. They were later caught using Bitcoin forensic techniques, but it shows just how unprepared governments and law enforcement agencies, even in major countries, are for dealing with these kinds of situations. But the governments are getting more advanced, so they've been using hacking methods and other methods of detecting the people behind Darknet services, including this site that was taken down and then controlled. In conclusion, there's a constant arms race between governments and the developers of the Darknet and Tor services. The Darknet provides valuable resources for money launderers, terrorists, and other criminals. And while de-anonymizing these services is hard, basic techniques can be used to identify the people behind them and to take them down. So the Darknet will remain a key battlefield in the future of the war against cybercrime. So thank you. If anybody is interested in getting copies of the slides, please contact me. And if anybody else is interested in learning more about cryptocurrencies, come to my event tomorrow. Do we have time for questions? Are there any questions?
Yes, I do have a clarification, not a question. Can you please get back to the slide where you have the website snapshot from local Bitcoins? Because Jonathan, I don't know if you know already or not, in Egypt, cryptocurrency trading is not allowed by the central bank. So in that website, where it particularly mentions the name of several banks, this is not official trading. This is street trading. Yeah, so this is just the point I wanted everybody to make sure of. The local banks in Egypt do not allow cryptocurrency trading.
So to clarify with this, when I say that they accept those payments, it is not the bank that is making the trade. This is an individual who has an account with these banks who is saying that they will accept a transfer of money to those banks in exchange for the Bitcoin.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions?